Hello all, welcome to your business communication lecture. The first tip I will give you about business communication is that you must remember that there are ethical implications for everything you say in the business world, especially when it is in writing. In the business world, your word is binding. It's one of the reasons that you're always encouraged to write in third person, rather than saying, I think, I believe, I did this, you should do that. If you write in third person, the document should be formatted in the following manner. Based on this logical progression of thoughts that I've laid out for you, it is clear that, or should be concluded that, blah blah blah. Rather than writing as an opinion, something that's related to I, where you take ownership for the idea, you take ownership for something being correct, you write it in third person. Remember that communication is absolutely irreversible in the business world. As soon as you write something down, it has become a legal document. A very simple example of this, your syllabus. As soon as I wrote everything down and sent it to you, it became a legally binding contract. You can actually use your syllabus in a court of law. That's the way things work in the business world. Everything from a very simple casual email to a very rigid contract. They are all considered legal documents in the business world as soon as they have been written down and distributed. So bear that in mind. Now, in business communication, perception, as with all aspects of communication, is one of the things that you should consider most strongly. When we perceive something, it's an active process where we take thoughts in, we take in information, communication, observations, and we organize it according to our past experiences. Let me give you a very simple example. The word cat. When I say cat, something pops into your head. It might be the picture that you had by the letter C when you're in elementary school. It might be your own personal cat. It might be that crazy neighbor lady's cat that used to chase you when you were a kid. For me personally, I think of a perfect, cute little black Halloween cat named Karma because that is my cat. And that's what I think of. So everything that I'm going to discuss with someone about cats, I'm using this reference of Karma, who is very smart, lean, athletic, and I'm comparing everything they say based on my reference of a cat. Every time we communicate with someone, we communicate based on our references. What is our reference for these objects they are talking about? If we have different references, we're probably misunderstanding part of the message. So it's very important to be thorough in your communication. Communication and perception, again, go hand in hand. And it's important to remember at all times that people never respond to what you say to them. Let me say that one more time. People never respond to what you say to them. They respond instead to what they perceive you said to them. When I was a child, I used to tease my dad about his I'm not yelling voice. Because, when you're a kid, you do things that are going to annoy grown-ups, and they know that you are being a child, and therefore they shouldn't be frustrated with you. My dad had this perfect I'm not yelling voice, where his voice would get louder and all the inflection would go away, but he was saying, of course everything is fine. Why do you think there's something wrong? No, I'm not annoyed. Well, okay, what I'm getting is all these words that say, I'm not annoyed, everything's fine, and yet for some reason I still feel like you're annoyed with me. Why could that be? Well, one of the things that you need to be aware of is when you break down a message, something that I'm sending to you face to face, only 7% of what you take away from that message is the words themselves. The rest is based on your perceptions. Your perception of my tone of voice, the paralinguistics, accounts for 38% of what you take away in that message. The other 55% of the message is in the physical behaviors that I'm enacting, those nonverbals. Because of this, when you are interacting with someone face to face, 93% of what you're saying isn't coming out of the words themselves. It's coming out of all the things that people perceive that message is wrapped up in. This is the reason that the number one cause of conflict in any interpersonal interaction, be it at home with your significant other, or your mother, father, child, be it at the workplace with a supervisor or subordinate or someone that's a peer, be it in the classroom. The number one cause of conflict is misperceiving. Okay? We often take a different message away than what was given to us by the sender. So this may cause us to have conflict because I think that what you're saying is incongruent with what you should be saying, or simply we both hear the same message and we're supposed to be working together, but even though we heard the exact same words, we took away different instructions, different responsibilities, and that has caused us to have conflict. So it's very, very important when you perceive that conflict is arising that you stop and you ask the source of the original message, what did you mean here? Here's what I perceived, but what did you mean? The best listeners are the ones who follow up by paraphrasing important instructions and significant messages. Bear that in mind at all times. Now this has some pretty hefty implications for computer-mediated communication. Most of what you will do in this class is computer-mediated communication. And that is because a lot of what you will do in the business world is computer-mediated communication. A lot of your communication is going to be through emails, instant messages, phone calls, those sorts of things where a lot of that message is missing. So you have to be very, very careful in how you compose messages through CMC to make sure that you maintain your credibility, because 93% of what you've probably been relying on to maintain your credibility is gone. Now, bearing that in mind, you read in your syllabus that there are 7 deadly sins of business writing in this class. These are 7 common writing errors that shouldn't happen. These are things that employers have given us feedback as faculty at A&T, and researchers have found consistently throughout the literature when they do studies on perception in the business world, that when employers or potential employers see these things, they go, ugh. Because you lose credibility when you make mistakes in the business world. And that's why I have captured these 7 ideas into the 7 deadly sins of business writing. We're going to talk about them now. If you have any questions at all, be sure to get in contact with me so that I can explain them more thoroughly. Because from here on out, if they show up in any of your assignments, it'll be an automatic 0. Okay? We've got to learn to make sure not to do these. Now, if you don't do any of them already, that's fabulous. That's marvelous. You're ahead of the curve. And if you do, then this is a safe environment where all it will cost you is a grade, not credibility, to learn to break these habits. Right? The first one, using the phrase, "my name is," in the body of a business document. For example, you send an email to someone that says, "Hi, my name is Stephanie. I'm applying for your job," or "I'm interested in a position at this company." That simple little phrase, "my name is," introducing yourself in the body of the document, is one of those things that makes employers do a face plant. The reason for this is there are places for your name to go in a business document. In an email, for instance, it's already in the from bar, and you're going to sign your name at the bottom. You should always sign your name off. That induces computer-mediated immediacy and social presence, and it's just good format, right? So your name doesn't go there. When you follow up in a business document in that body with what your name is, then you are automatically perceived to be poorly trained, because you don't know where your name is supposed to go, and you're perceived to have poor writing skills, because "my name is," that sounds like C-spot run sort of writing. Yeah? So, number 1 thing to avoid, giving your name, taking a time out from the actual message to tell what your name is in the body of a letter or any sort of business document. It already has a place to go. Number 2, using passive voice. This is when the action is on an object rather than on the person, on the subject, you, what you're trying to do. For instance, I cannot tell you how many emails or cover letters I have read that start off, "I'd like to take the time to thank you." Well, the problem with this is twofold. 1, that's super wordy. And number 2, you never actually get around to thanking the person, right? 2 major problems right there. Okay, So I'd like to thank you. I'm never actually going to do it in the body of this document. I'm just stating that I would like to. When you could just simply start your composition with, thank you for, right? You've thanked the person and you've done it in much fewer words. Other common interests like this, I am writing you to ask for assistance doing blah blah blah. People usually never get around to actually asking for the help there. It's a really wordy way to get to your point, right? And there's no action to it. Action-oriented messages are those that capture our attention. Using passive voice gives the impression that we're being insincere because we never actually do what we said we wanted to do, right? We don't say thanks, we don't ask, we just talk around it. And it gives the impression that we can't write concisely. So that's something you definitely want to avoid. Next, indenting paragraphs. If you ever come to a point where you need to indent a paragraph in a business document, it is because your company has given you special instructions. There will be nothing in this class, and I cannot even begin to think of an example for you of a business document in which you're supposed to indent your paragraphs. Always left align your document. When you don't do this, it just looks like you're not trained, right? So it's very important to remember. Next, number 4. Having a greeting after the greeting. Dear Dr. Kelly, hello. Dear Mr. Smith, greetings. You only need one. Greetings, or Dear Dr. Smith. Either of those work, but you don't need two in the document, especially not piled on top of one another. This is again one of those things that makes it look like you're poorly trained because you have a very elementary writing style. When we were kids, we were told to start letters, Dear Mom, hi, how are you? I am fine. And that's what that type of writing is reminiscent of. So we want to make sure we avoid those things that make us look like we're not very well educated. Okay, number 5, misspelling the word resume. There are E's. There are accent marks over both E's. Okay? R, E with an accent mark, S, U, M, E with an accent mark. It's very important that both accent marks are there or it's not spelled correctly. I know that if you do a Google search for the word R-E-S-U-M-E, you will often find resumes popping up. That is because quite often people get lazy and they don't include it. It's not correct. That word is resume and it means to start again. Having a resume or a cover letter with the word resume misspelled automatically makes you look poorly educated and as though you are not detail oriented. We don't want those perceptions to come across. Number 6, having a paragraph with less than 3 sentences. If there aren't at least 3 sentences, it's simply not a paragraph. So make sure that your paragraph is whole and complete and you look like you know what you're doing. And finally, using qualifiers like I think and I believe. I think we should have casual Friday. Well, remember what we said earlier about trying to write in third person, and when you put something in writing, you're ethically bound to it? Well, that means you're taking ownership for that idea that I think we should have casual Friday. And if you don't have evidence for that, it's going to come across poorly for you in the future. Right? You need to have logical evidence and documentation to support anything you put in writing in the business world. But more immediately, the reason that's problematic is because you've stated something as though you have no defense for it. If you're going to put it down knowing the high stakes there, you should be able to support it with evidence, right? We should have casual Fridays because of the following pieces of evidence. Always make sure that you have evidence to say something, or don't put it down at all. Never say I think or I believe. If you cannot state it without those qualifiers, leave it out. It's dangerous. Now, just on a side note, because A&T is an organization, all teacher-student emails are actually considered to be business communication. So every time you send a teacher an email, it has automatically become a legal document that can be used in the court of law. Just as an FYI, any casual correspondence you have at work, if it is sent from your business account, it is a legal document. These are things that you should bear in mind when we engage in casual communication in the business world, or when we engage in emotional communication. I believe we have all been guilty at some point in time of at least thinking, if not actually sending, a hateful email or a emotionally charged email, shall I say. Something where we pour everything out that we're actually thinking when we've gotten a bad grade, when we've been slighted, when we found out someone has mistreated us. We think, even if we don't actually send what we're putting out there. Actually sending that can be disastrous because it's a legal document then, and it can be used against us later on, so be sure not to do that. In the PowerPoint that accompanies this, I've included a couple of comic strips, and these are comic strips of things that happen a lot to faculty where students do not manage their perception well, and because of that they lose credibility for the student. The first example is a comic in which students are coming in and asking for questions where the information is on the syllabus. If the information is on the syllabus, then by all means ask the teacher. If the information is unclear to you on the syllabus, ask the teacher. But coming in and asking, what are your office hours? Or what's the late work policy? Or when do we turn this in? If it's in the syllabus, make sure you know this. Okay? The syllabus is given to you as a contract, right? It is something for you to have and know and provide you assistance as a guide throughout the class. Students who don't look at those things and then go to ask the teacher automatically lose credibility, right? Because it looks like you're not prepared. And sometimes it looks like you don't care about the material or about the class, because if you did, wouldn't you have gone ahead and looked at all the information that was provided to help you succeed? Another thing that happens a lot, and this is a wording issue that probably does not mean the way it's taken across. When a student asks a teacher, did I miss anything important in class yesterday? What the teacher is thinking, typically when they're asked that, is sarcastically, no, of course you didn't miss anything important. I'm just bored and I have no friends, and that's why I spent all that time preparing course material to present to you in such a way that you could use it in the future. Now what the student probably means is, hey, I had to miss class yesterday, sorry about that. Is the material that I missed something that I can recover from on my own, or do I need to get additional resources? Right? That's what the student means, but a lot of times it's worded as, did I miss anything important yesterday? Which is a credibility killer. Always think about your audience. That's the point in this. Think about what your audience deals with on a daily basis. If it's your teacher, consider how many emails they get from students who have probably not read the syllabus and ask a question of information they've already provided that day. Or if it's your supervisor, think about all the times they have repeated the instructions for this procedure this week, or this day, or this year, over and over and over again. And even though you were probably only there to hear it once, in their head, they've said it so many times, why doesn't everybody already know this? So manage your reputation, manage your credibility. Start with, I just wanted to follow up on what we discussed earlier and make sure I understood, and paraphrase it. Verify that your understanding is correct. That's the way that you manage perception in the business world. It's always about verification. You present evidence that shows, look, I've already done my part. I've thought it through. I've looked up the information. I've done whatever I was supposed to do. And now, because I care and because I'm responsible, I want to follow up and make sure that I put all the pieces of the puzzle together correctly. That is how you manage your perception in the business world.